Good morning, everyone. We're really excited to bring you our latest webinar on resilience, the art of bouncing back. Today, we've got Emily, our founder and director, who does a lot of work with millennials and is finding resilience to be a very hot topic, joining us, as well as Dora Kordakis, who's our lead performance coach, who's an expert in brain science, also joining us. To talk about and shed some light on the fine art of resilience and some strategies that you can take away and adopt. We've been doing a lot of research into the pillars of resilience in these COVID times. And as we prepare to navigate the next wave of change, we feel that this is a really pertinent topic. So with no further ado, I will bring in Emily and Dora.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning. Good to see you, Emily.
Good to see you. Yeah, we've got a couple of people I can see that have already joined us. So welcome everybody. Today's session is really important, I think, because we're all in a situation where whatever's going on for us, we're starting to ask ourselves a number of questions around how can we be a little bit more resilient and deal with all of this uncertainty and change that we're facing at the moment. So this is a massive topic, and Dora and I could literally talk about this for about 3 days, we think.
Absolutely.
But we're going to give everybody an understanding today of what resilience really is, like what's the definition of resilience, because I think there's a bit of confusion around what it really means. We're going to be sharing with you the 7 C's or 7 pillars of resilience. And as Jessie mentioned, we've been doing an enormous amount of research into this because everybody needs to be resilient, not just in times like this, but I think it's such an important life skill to build. And I think it's like a muscle. The more you build it and work it, the better you become. It's like anything, really. We're also going to be talking about brain science, and Dora's a bit of a guru, an expert in brain science, so that's really exciting because understanding why we react in certain ways is really, really important so that we can start creating healthier habits and practices to help us. And at the end of the day, hopefully we're going to change the way you view adversity, because not everybody likes uncertainty or change. I actually thrive on it and I really enjoy it, but I know that that's probably not normal. So to start off, we'd love to get a thumbs up of everybody who's watching right now, who over the last couple of weeks, months, has felt really anxious or felt the pinch of all of this uncertainty. You may have been drinking a little bit more than normal. You could have been a bit more snappy. I know that there's been times where I've been a little bit snappy with my husband and my son. So just give us a thumbs up if that's you, because I feel like many of you are probably feeling the pinch in whatever way, shape or form that is for you. So
I think also a thumbs up if you've actually just experienced some really significant change even this week. I know that for us, we've actually gotten right into the rhythm of all being at home, and I had to send a kid to school. So that created a whole other world.
I agree. It's like a changing dynamic. You just get used to being at home with your family and this kind of slower paced life. And now for me, I can feel it all ramping up again, and I can feel my anxiety levels starting to rise as I do the morning rush. Like, although there's not traffic, I still feel this sense of anxiety is probably the best way to describe it. Trying to get my son ready for school and get him there in time. And now we've got these set times where you have to take them. I don't know if your school's doing this, but
absolutely.
Staggered start times, and if you're late, it's like a massive thing. So Yeah, there's just a lot of change going on, and it's, everyone's talking about the new normal. I think the new normal is changing on a daily basis, and we all need to be really open to these changes and learn about what's the best way to move forward when we're going to be probably facing an enormous amount of change ongoing for the next however long.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, what comes up when I think about resilience, it's really that ability to bounce back when something bad happens or when you're faced with a stressful situation. And I think that some people are really naturally good at dealing with change and adversity because of their personality type and character, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But for some other people, they find it really difficult. And we all have certain triggers, and learning to be more resilient is about being aware of yourself, being aware of others, and understanding what you can do to build up that resilience muscle. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today.
100%. So that's exactly right, Emily. And what we see is that ultimately it's our brain. Yeah, everything happens in our head. We say it, I'm in my head, but our brain is geared to either fight, flight, freeze, or flourish. And we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into that today, because that's really, really pivotal in the way that we can actually support ourselves, not to get over it, but to actually really be able to break it down and be able to work through what our challenges are in a resilient manner, rather than just being reactive, which is really, really important. So take us through the 7 pillars.
All right. So we, based on our research, and there's a lot of research around resilience, it's kind of a buzzword at the moment. I really think of resilience as having grit. I love the word grit. I think that being able to dig deep and have grit has so many positive messages in it. But we have found that there's really 7 pillars that make up a resilient person, and they're kind of 7 practices that you can implement into your life. And as we said, there is so much that we could share with you, but we've only got 45 minutes to an hour. So we're going to be focusing on 4 of the most important things, but we'll just brush over very quickly what the 7 are. So the first one is control. And for me, the Tony Robbins quote comes up. One of the things that he says that I love, it's about where focus goes, energy flows. Oh, sorry, we could just go back to the previous slide. Thanks, Jessie, who's driving in the background. So we're going to deep dive into that one today, because that's probably the biggest pillar of resilience. And then the second one is around capability. So it's looking at our mindset around what our own personal capabilities are, because they can determine how resilient we are. And that's whether you have a growth or fixed mindset, essentially. We're not going to deep dive into that one. The next one is around coping. So it's about what are the choices that you make daily that either builds up your resilience or erodes your resilience. And we're going to dive deep into that one, because that's super important. The third one is around confidence, and we are going to dive into the brain science behind what makes a resilient person and what you can do when you get triggered, essentially, to build up that resilience. The next one is connection. I think this is pretty obvious. The more connected you are, the more you feel that you have a support network around you and that you have that tribe, the more resilient you are. And obviously that's a big thing at the moment, because some of us are feeling very disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to deep dive into that one too much today, because we don't have time. We touched on character before, and that's about really understanding who you are, what your personality type is, and what your triggers are. We're not going to go too much into that. And then the final one is around contribution, and this is about the brain science behind why giving back, volunteering, doing random acts of kindness makes us more resilient. So very high level. They're the 7 pillars of resilience based on our research. And we're now going to learn about the control pillar, because this is by far the most important one. And I love talking about this. It's really impactful.
It sure is, Emily. And one of the things that we really understand about control is that there are things in our world that we can control, and there are things that we just can't. And depending on where we put our energy and our focus and how we actually react and respond to the world at large actually takes up space in our whole being, which basically means we can put activity and energy into something, and that activity and energy can lead to nothing, or we can put energy and activity into something that can actually make a significant difference. One of the things that also we need to take into effect around control, and I know that we're not going to deep dive into character today, but we all have tendencies and we all have natural ways that we react and respond as part of our personality. And our personality has a huge impact on how we then act to the things that we can and we can't control. If we go to the next slide, we've prepared for you guys this really wonderful circle of control, just to give an overview of a really typical viewpoint of the things that you cannot control, and then the things that you can control. If I think about this particular pillar in regard to what we've been seeing in the last couple of months, the example that I was having a chin wag to Emily about, and I'll share it with you guys today, is, during this time, we've really seen how people react and respond and what people have focused on, which basically means that we've had situations where the people around us have either focused on the worst case scenario, all of the conspiracy theories that are out there, the aliens have taken over, and, pack up your bunkers and go and buy all your toilet paper because that's going to run out. And the focus on stuff that's out there that not only do we have no certainty around, but really, as a little individual on the planet, how much of it could we control? I was telling Emily about, we were talking yesterday, Emily, about, my husband and I had this just in our own home. He would come home and he would turn the TV on and watch the news on a minute-by-minute basis and give me a complete rundown on all the statistics globally around, who had caught the pandemic and, was it a pandemic or was it an epidemic, and what does the death term look like, and how is the virus connected to the rest of the viruses that have happened on the planet? So much so that he had worked himself up into a complete stupor. The adverse reaction of focusing on all the things that he could not control meant that the rest of us in the house were put on edge. So we had this situation where, even our children started to freak out and have stress and anxiety because of this virus that was happening, on the planet at large. And yes, it's a concern, but focusing on all the stuff that was really just feeding our mind in a really, really negative manner. So we had to really pull back and think about all the things that we could control. We could control our own home environment. We went into lockdown, and we've been in lockdown, as my daughter will say, for 74 days now, Mum. like we're on a desert island. But it just meant that we were able to think about what could we control. We can control how we spend the time. Do we spend the time doing exercise and wonderful activities together, or do we spend the time sitting around the kitchen table talking about how terrible everything is? It's that choice. So we've had this wonderful opportunity to really reflect as a society at large on this resilient pillar of control around what our choice is of what we are going to do. And we've seen some fantastic examples through social media around what people are doing during this time in order to create some humour and some compassion around the things that they can and cannot control. We've been told when we can take our children to school. We've been told, that we're going to see another wave of change. If we anticipate it too much, all we're doing is creating further stress, and it paralyzes us into the unknown and allows us to just sit in the problems and drama rather than also being able to celebrate the things that we are able to actually navigate during this time.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so important. I'm finding that even spending time looking at social media and seeing the different reactions. I have a friend that I obviously won't name who has been obsessed with this pandemic since it started, and every single post was catastrophizing the worst case scenario, to the point where this person was asked to go back to work recently and refused to go back to work because they were so afraid that they're going to die from COVID-19. And so it really does impact on our mental state and our mindset, and it's not healthy, and it's definitely not building resilience, because if you are in a state of fear and anxiety 24/7, 7 days a week, it's really unhealthy, and it makes you crazy. So it's really important to focus on what you can control, and what you can control is what time you get up every day, what you're eating, what you're feeding your mind. So watching the news 24/7, checking the global cases of COVID-19 page every 5 minutes, not healthy. Focusing on yourself and your locus of control is definitely the first step to building resilience.
And what we've seen in this space, Emily, as well around these things is, we've had a number of people who have contacted us at HR Gurus because they've needed to create new processes and procedures in their workplace as they split up their teams and put them, on their kitchen tables and, in their children's bedrooms, on the desks that are available. Mm-hmm. And there were people who, took control of these situations with a really dynamic, you talk about locus of control, with a really great internal locus of control, which basically stems from the fact that they have a can-do attitude around whatever it is that they face, yeah? On the flip side of that, we've seen heaps of situations where people are setting up a home office and their expectation is that somebody else will fix the problem for them, yeah? Mm-hmm. So they've got an external locus of control, which basically paralyzes them in a way and expects somebody to make it happen for them. So this again feeds into, it's quite scientific and it's quite specific, and you're absolutely right. We could talk about just this pillar for 45 minutes because it's really, really pivotal. But it's a really great opportunity for us to reflect and to think, okay, I may have thought that I could control a particular situation, or that by immersing myself in something or by complaining about something, I was actually controlling it. But was I really? Yeah. And did it help me in any way? Did it facilitate me to be able to move forward and to actually do my most important work? Or did it just allow me to sit in the problems and drama of the situation, and then that became my work? The problem became my work, not the actual work.
I agree. It's really about ownership, and being resilient is about owning your own shit and making positive choices, and then being accountable for those choices. So if you're sitting on social media all day, or every conversation you have starts with, oh my God, COVID-19, guess what? You're eroding.
Did you hear?
Yeah, did you hear? Oh my God, there's been another case. Not very effective. So The next pillar is equally as important, and that is really your coping mechanisms, because the way that we cope is very different. So some people have coped in this scenario by drinking a lot more, maybe smoking a few cigarettes. I don't know, I'm not going to name any names, but anyway, other people
eating lots of chocolate.
Eating lots of chocolate, cooking banana bread, whatever the heck floats your boat. So we all cope differently in different situations, and I think that we can't judge people or look at their choices and say, oh well, you're a loser, or you're bad, or I'm better than you because I did this. I got really sick of seeing people posting on social media about, this is a great time to learn a new language or do this or that. Like, it's like, we're all just coping the best that we can, and that's okay. But there's definitely...
Hey, Em, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a wrong way of coping?
I don't think so. I think it's okay to do what you got to do and cope in your way, as long as it doesn't become an unhealthy habit, and doesn't become detrimental. So, like for me, initially when this first happened, I'm not going to lie, I got really stressed and anxious. My husband was overseas. He was in Canada, so I was by myself, and I went into this really negative headspace, and I stopped exercising. I kind of went into a freeze mode where I just stopped. I started drinking like every day as a coping mechanism, and was that good, bad, or ugly? Probably a little bit of all of those things, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I just had to do what I had to do in that moment. And, I think you go through waves. Like, you can't, it's ridiculous to think that you can be perfect and be this perfect human being all of the time. You are going to fall off the wagon, and you are going to do things occasionally that you may not normally do, and that's okay. I think we just need to be kind to ourselves, but there's definitely some coping mechanisms that are going to they're going to set you up for success, and there's others that are going to create some negative wiring and negative habits. So if we think about what some of these are, I think practicing gratitude, I know that's a buzzword at the moment, and for some people that might seem a bit fluffy, but when I realized that the power of focusing on everything I had rather than focusing on everything I didn't have, it literally changed my life. It's so important to just be grateful for the things that we have that other people don't. Like, my husband's really good at doing that for me. When I complain about our sticky sliding door, he's like, do you know how lucky we are to have a house with a door? Like, there's so many people who don't. So it's those little things. Journaling's also really good. I journal every single day. It helps me process my thoughts, particularly if you're feeling anxious or upset. Writing down what's going on for you. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and if I'm stressing about something or something is rolling around in my head, I just get up and I write it down and I go back to sleep like that.
Hey,
like,
Em, didn't you create a really good snapshot, one-pager gratitude journaling thing for Generation Us?
I did. So it's called a focus hack. So it's really about helping people practice a morning routine that's going to set them up for a great day. So I'm going to share that with everyone at the end of this session. But it's got all of this resilient stuff built into it. So...
And it's a really quick one-pager, isn't it? So you don't have to spend 3 hours writing in a journal, in a diary, but really focus in on, how you're feeling, what you want to get out of the day.
Exactly, because that gives us certainty and it gives us focus. So they're really important in terms of building resilience. So some other things there, I mean, everybody can see what we've got up there is obviously exercise, meditation, whatever floats your boat. Like, I really would love to be great at yoga and flexible, but I hate it. So there's no point in me going, oh, I'm going to do yoga every day, because the reality is I'm not going to do that. So you need to find something that you like. And meditation for me, I don't really like meditating either. I'm a very active person, but just going for a walk every day is super important in terms of filling up my personal love tank, and helps me cope a lot better. I get up at 5 o'clock every day because I've learned that I need to have an hour by myself. A lot of our anxiety and stress comes from the fact that we are just completely run down and giving so much of ourselves to everybody else that we don't actually give ourselves any love, and that erodes resilience.
Absolutely.
So positive self-talk is really important, and that comes back to what we were talking about before in terms of control. You can control the things that you say to yourself and the things that you say to others. So storytelling is so important. So if the story that you're running at the moment is, oh my God, the world's going to end, oh my God, there's going to be a second wave, oh my God, we're all going to die, obviously that's not a very positive story to be telling yourself, because you're just hardwiring it in your system and in your brain, and it's just creating just unnecessary anxiety. So you can control these things. The final one is super important in terms of coping, and this is something that I've had to learn, is that you need to talk to people and you need to get help. So if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, reach out. I've always had a coach in my business, because being a business owner is a lonely path sometimes, because you don't feel like you can talk to your employees about what's going on. Sometimes it's inappropriate. So it's really important to seek help if you are feeling shit and overwhelmed. There is nothing wrong with talking about your feelings and saying, do you know what? I'm not okay. So
yeah, absolutely.
These are, I would say, the most important things in terms of building your ability to cope with stress and change and adversity is these coping skills. So I've kind of touched on these already, but there's 3 ways to really erode resilience. The first one is negative self-talk and self-sabotage. So setting yourself up to fail and then beating yourself up about it. So that might look like, at the moment, going, oh my God, I feel so fat and disgusting because I haven't exercised for the whole time I've been in lockdown. Next week, I'm going to lose 10 kilos and I'm going to exercise every single day, and just setting yourself an unrealistic goal with a really kind of negative undertone to it. So not really helpful. You need to be realistic. If you haven't been exercising at all, I would say maybe make a commitment that you're going to exercise 3 times that week, and do some positive things like
go out.
Go out for
a lovely.
But what I do if I know I'm going to exercise the next day is I get my clothes ready. It's such a simple thing, but you're preparing yourself mentally so that you're making it easy. Another way to erode resilience is gossiping, blaming, name calling, and yelling. Very simple, but the whole gossiping behind people's back, you can control that. That's something you can stop doing. Blaming everybody else, it might be your manager, you might be blaming them because you feel a little bit disconnected at the moment. If you're feeling like that, own it and give them a call and say, hey, I'm just needing a bit more communication from you, or I'm needing a little bit more contact. The final thing that erodes your resilience is avoidance or shutting down. So if you're feeling shit and you are just starting to go really within yourself and feeling that horrible feeling of isolation, just sitting back and sitting with that and like perpetuating that is going to make you feel even worse. So you have a choice.
I think what we've seen as well here is, because we've all been isolated, for a particularly long time, there's sometimes what I've seen, especially with some of the people that I've been coaching, is they've had some fear, and that's created them to avoid having any type of touch points. It's almost like that level of, I'm just going to sit back and wait and see what other people are going to do. And because I'm hiding in my little cave at home, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Exactly. It's really different for different people. I'm an extrovert, so I found this really difficult because I get my energy from people. And so I felt like at times really alone and isolated. And when I feel like that, I go really into this negative headspace where I get to the point where I don't want to see people. It's really weird. But I've spoken to some other extroverts, and they're feeling the same. And at the start, I was avoiding doing something about it because that's the flight kind of reaction that you have. You want to run away, or the freeze reaction. But it's about understanding, well, I have a choice here on how I can deal with this and how I react.
Yeah.
So really important to know that by doing all of these things, if you're doing some good stuff, you can completely undo it by doing something stupid like gossiping or bitching and moaning about people.
Absolutely.
Even our
and it's
husband.
really interesting how one really negative behaviour actually throws all the good stuff out. I know that, I had started on such a great trajectory doing, beautiful waking up, and I love doing yoga. So waking up in the morning and doing my yoga and taking the dog for a walk. And then as soon as, I started hearing everybody giving up almost, oh, this is just terrible. It's the end of the world as we know it. We don't have enough toilet paper. We don't have enough pasta, like everything's going to be at the end. I started thinking, I'm a pretty positive, optimistic person. I started thinking, oh my goodness, like what's the point? Like, what's the point in making an effort, or what's the point in tapping into my coping skills if everything is futile? And that really does affect your psychology because your brain is geared towards the negative, and we can really fall down that rabbit hole. So it's really important.
So that leads really nicely into the next thing that we're going to talk about, or you're going to talk about, which is this whole concept of brain science and confidence, and why some people see adversity as a great thing and eat it up, and other people just lose their shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all really depends on what our state of mind is, yeah? And that's not something that people have not heard in their lives, but we literally live in zones of conversation that happen in our brain, and the different type of synapses that go off in our brain give us either really the good feels that make us shine and flourish, or they give us the bad feels that make us paralyzed or run away, or, really start self-sabotaging and hurting ourselves. And we can see with this slide here, there's lots of physical, almost psychosomatic stuff that happens as far as, what stress hormones get released when we start to feel that fear. And it's true and it's real, and we've probably all felt it right at the beginning. We started to have our feelings of anxiety when we spoke about stuff. Our mouths probably went really dry. We just froze and waited for someone to tell us what to do. The blood starts to flow out of our brain, and we start to feel like a little bit fuzzy and overwhelmed, and we can't make decisions. Yeah. And I don't know if you've been in this situation, Emily, but I know that I have in my life. When something is just reactive at you and you're expected to make a decision straight away, you don't always make the very best decision.
Yeah.
And, it's all well and good to then blame and gossip about that decision afterward, but it's not really very helpful. The example that is really front of mind for me around this one is homeschooling. Yeah, we pulled our children out of schools. We set up our kitchen tables as the school desk, and we all expected that some miracle was going to happen and that this homeschooling was going to be prepared in the most beautifully eloquent way, while these teachers were, fighting in the background trying to make it as perfect as possible. And we've been juggling, looking after kids, homeschooling, as well as doing our own work, as well as having to, look at all the mess that was being created around us because we were at home. And the level of anxiety just rose and rose. And for me, a lot of the time, at the beginning especially, I really had to step outside of the situation and observe what would be the most proactive way to ensure that we were making the best of this situation, not actually falling into the trap of bitching about it. Yeah, because let's face it, you really want to just bitch about it. Oh, why is this happening? I can't believe I've also got to be the teacher and the mother and the cook and the cleaner. But instead being able to just look at it and go, all right, well, this is what it is. Yeah. Today is not going to be great because I don't really know what we're doing. So let's go through it and just fluff our way through it, and we'll get there. And every day we see, as we take it in a proactive way, we move further away from all of those frenetic, frantic synapses that are giving us anxiety into oh, wow, I didn't even realize that we could make this happen. Yeah. And our whole environment started to feel a little bit different. I'm not saying we didn't get frustrated, Emily. I'm not saying that we want to run back into that zone straight away, because it is challenging. But we want life to be challenging. We want to be shifted. If we're sitting too much in a comfort zone, apathy sets in, and indifference and apathy is boring and sloth-like. But being able to flourish in something and being able to see our workmates being able to present and create different ways of working from a distance has also been really celebratory for us. So when we think of it in confidence, what that looks like is, we talked about at the beginning of this homeschooling, Emily, we had this moment where we talked about failing, and you told me this beautiful story about Sebi and, having moments where he felt like he was failing. And I don't have a slide for this yet, but, the acronym that I shared with you was the acronym for FAIL, which is first attempt in learning. Yeah. And if we give ourselves permission to fail, then we give ourselves permission to learn, which then gives us confidence in the doing. We can't know everything, and we don't come to the party knowing everything. But what we do is we give ourselves opportunities to sit with stuff and to learn it.
Yeah, beautiful. And so what's a strategy that people can use when they can feel themselves going into this fight, flight? I always stuff it up. Fight, flight, or fight mode. You're going to have to pick it up from there, because
So one of the reasons why we get into these stress responses is because we are basically put in an away state. Yeah. So an away state basically means is that we don't want to deal with it. Yeah. So think about situations or people that you've had to connect in with, and you just did not want to deal with that particular type of situation. So you shut down. Yeah. For things to be able to move along in a really positive manner, we want to be working in a towards state. And we've come across this amazing concept called the SCARF model. And we didn't make it up. David Rock made it up, but it is so simple, and it really is so effective to help us understand what our triggers are, because all of our triggers are different. Yeah. what our triggers might be that put us in an away state, and how we can actually communicate with each other more effectively and understand what somebody's trigger might be, or understand what our own triggers might be, so that we can navigate towards a towards state.
Yeah.
So it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's not really. You know, and the SCARF model is, again, another acronym. I love acronyms, don't I?
You do love acronyms, Dora, but it makes it really easy to understand. But can you give us an example of how this SCARF model may be relevant now? Yeah, I know we talked yesterday about this whole returning to work thing, because we had a situation where we were all told we had to work from home, and now we're being told, oh, we can now go back into the office or back into our jobs, and that is creating a certain situation. So how could someone, or how does the SCARF model apply to what we're experiencing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So if you have a look at what the acronym actually means, or the words that are coming out of the acronym, we have status, which is how we see ourselves in relation to others; certainty, having an understanding or a knowledge about what's going to happen. My favourite saying, you know, setting it up for success or setting it up for failure. Autonomy, how much choice we have in a matter. The relatedness, how we feel about somebody else. And the fairness, do we feel that we're being treated fairly? So in regards to the fantastic example of being asked to possibly change the way that we work again, we may, from a status perspective, we may look at it in regards to, well, you know, are executives going back in, or are we going to send the bulk of the workers back in? And why are they going back into the office and not me? Yeah, so we might start to have a rhetoric that goes on in our mind that is saying, are the choices that are being made actually elevating my status so that I feel important and valued in this workplace, or are they making me feel like I'm being left out? Yeah. So that might be a question. If you are having a little bit of an away state, or you're feeling a little bit like fight, flight, or freeze, ask yourself, is my status being affected here?
Yeah.
Or do I just need more information about what to expect?
Yeah.
So the example that I have here as well, and I think, you know, the school and the work, going back to school and going back to work in the same week has been a really good one for us in this particular one. My 7-year-old on Monday started crying, saying, "Mum, I don't want to go back to school because I'm really scared."
Yeah.
And we had to have a huge conversation around what the fear was. So I scarfed him, I asked him, what are your fears? What's the most important thing for you? You know, what's going to help you so that you know what's required of you? And what I realized was he needed some certainty, and he also needed to have an escape clause. To know that if he got there and it wasn't the way that he was expecting it, that he could call me, or he could get the school to call me, and I was going to safely come and take him away. And I think that that's what we also need going back to work. We need the certainty of knowing, what is the office going to look like? How many of us are going to be in there? What are the protocols for the cleaning up of the office? Will I be cleaning my own phone? Will I be just using my mobile phone and not the desk phone? What's the keyboard going to look like? Will I just use my laptop because I know that that's come from home? Will I need to get on the train? All these huge questions are just feeding into giving us the certainty that we need to know what it's going to look like.
So it sounds like the SCARF model can be used in two ways. It can be, you can SCARF yourself, which I do all the time. So something, absolutely. You know, when you get that feeling where you get that, like, for me, I start sweating and I get really hot, and I'm like, oh, what's going on there? Someone's pressed a little trigger, and then I scarf myself. and I work out, and it's normally for me around status, but that's a really important thing to me, and that's a personality thing. And so someone will have impacted my status, and that will make me have a physical and mental reaction. So I think being resilient is about awareness and about being able to talk yourself and coach yourself around these things. But it sounds like scarf is also really good if you're a leader or a business owner, when you are communicating with your employees, to make sure that you're wrapping them in a scarf to ensure that you're crossing off all of these certain things. I mean, for me, being a business owner, I realize that a lot of people need certainty.
Yeah.
And that's not a big thing for me in terms of the scarf model. I don't really need certainty. I'm happy to fly by the seat of my pants. In fact, I love it. And we've experienced this with us doing these webinars, because Dora really likes to be organized and practice, and she writes her notes, whereas I'll just kind of just rock up on the day and see what happens type of person. So everybody's different, and understanding what the most important things are for you is super important, so that you can build your resilience, and also recognize that when you are going into that away state, okay, well, what do I need to think about to get me back into that towards state?
Absolutely. And I know that we're not going to touch into character today, but we definitely do it in our workshop on this module. But understanding people's personality and understanding what their needs are means that when you are leading a team, you can actually approach that team member in a way that really empowers them, and we talk about empowering, but it actually has deeper meaning. And by empowering others, we're supporting their resilience. Resilience isn't something that you go and buy off the shelf at the supermarket. It's something that we really have to be really mindful of, and actually see the very, very slight cues that show us that someone's either losing it, or you're actually supporting them to help them get through something. And also being able to ask for it and say, you know what, I actually need a bit more choice in this manner. I need to know, choice is a really big one for people. We're all adults, and knowing that we have input into the way that we operate and that we work means that we come to the table in a way that is about desire. You want to actually succeed when your ideas and your thoughts and your way of working is taken into consideration.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. We could obviously talk about brain science and scarf all day, but really, really important tool to use for yourself and others in times of adversity. So the next thing that we're going to talk about, I think this is the last one that we're going to talk about today. We're nearly up to an hour. This has gone very quickly. Obviously, Dora and I are very passionate about this topic. But the final one that we're going to cover today is contribution. And there's brain science once again behind all of this. When you do acts of kindness, or you do nice things for other people, something amazing happens in your brain. You release this chemical called oxytocin, and it's called the love drug. You also release oxytocin when you kiss somebody, when we're having sex, when we are in childbirth. A woman releases oxytocin, and they don't call it the love drug for nothing. So when you do something really nice for somebody else, you get a free hit of that stuff, and it makes you feel really, really good. And it's been shown through research to boost things like self-esteem, your energy, your overall well-being and happiness. So who doesn't want a bit more of that? People who give back to others are generally more happy, and this is a really key factor in building resilience. And what I find through my work with millennials is this is such a big thing these days. Young people understand this. In fact, millennials are more likely to volunteer than any other generation, which I find fascinating. And the reason that they do it is because it makes them feel good, and it builds their resilience by releasing oxytocin, which is an amazing thing. So in these times, we have probably been focusing quite inwardly, but it's a really good time to start thinking about, well, what could I do to give back? Whether you're a leader and you're thinking about how can I give back to my employees, and saying thank you costs absolutely nothing, and is going to give you a really good dose of oxytocin, and it's going to give them a really good dose of oxytocin, and it's going to spread the love. And just by sending them a text message, giving them a call and saying, hey, I really appreciate everything that you've done over these times. The other day, Dora actually gave me a bottle of champagne, and we both got like all teary because we're just, we're all warm and fuzzy, and we're women and we love this shit, obviously. But just these random acts of kindness are so important. My mother always taught me that when you go to somebody's house, you never ever arrive without a bunch of flowers and a gift or a bottle of wine or something. And there's a reason for that. It's good manners, but it's also really polite and it makes you feel good. So, you could be thinking about, what can I do for my family, my extended family? In lockdown, my nana, who's 92 years of age, couldn't leave the house. And the most important thing for her was to have her Carlton Light beer, which is really hard to get. So I went and bought her a slab and disinfected it and dropped it off on her doorstep. And, it made me feel really good, and it obviously made her feel really good. And she said to me, she's so funny, she said, oh, you're a pal, Emily. You're a pal. So these little things definitely help to build your resilience. So I would ask you, in the last 7 days, what nice things have you done for other people? And what are some things, and if you haven't, what could you do? Just, you don't have to spend any money, just simple things. Go and give your wife a kiss. Go and give your kids a hug. Contribution is super, super important. So I won't bang on about it for too much longer because I think we probably need to wrap it up. But Dora, what are the 3 traits of resilient people based on all of the stuff we've talked about today?
Yeah, so the big 3 takeaways really are that, in building your resilience and thinking about sharpening that pencil, thinking about, what you're hopeful for, planning for the future, having those goals, knowing that you're working towards something. If you're not working towards something, then you're really just, walking around in circles. So we see that resilience is really nurtured when we're hopeful. Resilience is also really nurtured when you believe that you can do something. And it's a really important one because it takes a bit of life to make you feel capable and competent and think that you can actually do something. And just like you said before as well, Emily, it also is fostered by your tribe, by the people that you surround yourself with. There are people that make us feel really crap about ourselves, and there are people that make us feel really good about ourselves. So, part of being resilient is letting go of the people that don't give us that nurturing, that make us believe that we can actually achieve stuff and we can achieve stuff together. And finally, being grateful. And that doesn't mean that you walk around going, oh, I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for that, but really being able to see the optimism and the positivity. I know we've been banging on a bit about our kids on this one, but, they've kind of been in our faces for the last 3 months. But my son the other day, he knows that for my 50th last year, I really wanted to go to Africa and I never got there. And he said to me the other night, Mum, he called me into his room and we were looking out of his window and we've got this beautiful view of the sunset. He said, Mum, look at that tree out in the distance. Look at it and pretend you're in Africa. And I was really grateful. I was really grateful to just sit on his bed and just pretend to be in Africa, because sometimes, it's those little things in life that really make a difference. It's the devil in the detail. So, think about walking away from today. Think about what you're hopeful for. Think about the stuff that you got, because you got it. Yeah, you're awesome people out there, and you do amazing things, and give yourself a massive pat on the back, because, you know, we believe in you, and we know that you believe in yourself, and be really grateful for the stuff that you've done this week.
I love it. It's very simple, very simple. So we've got 6 hot tips that we just want you to take away, so that you can just, starting today, start to build that resilience, because it doesn't take much. And these are like daily habits and practices that you can implement very easily. We've talked about random acts of kindness, get that hit of oxytocin, go and say thank you to somebody, go and apologize to somebody, like forgive quickly with meaning, also really important. My Nana, who I've spoken about already today, has a saying that it takes a bigger person to forgive than it does to hold a grudge. And I've always believed that, because moving through life with hate is really, really unhealthy. You got to move on when shit goes wrong and forgive people. The next one is creating a routine, and I think this is so important because it creates a feeling of safety. We are a mammal, we're an animal, and the reason that we like routines, the reason that a baby likes to be put to bed at the same time and gets up at the same time every day is because it makes them feel safe, and we are giant babies. I hate to tell you. So getting up at the same time every day, going to bed at the same time, having a routine. Kids like routine and structure as well. It's really, really important, building that into your life. Keeping a journal, a gratitude journal, and I'm going to give everyone a really awesome download at the end of this session via email. Obviously, exercise, meditation, all the fluffy stuff, but it's so important. We are not meant to be sedentary animals that sit on our asses all day. We are designed to move, and if we don't, it makes us feel shit. That's the bottom line. And finally, people who are resilient have a growth mindset, and they want to be the best version of themselves. They have this thirst for learning, and they don't want to sit on their laurels. And that's a choice. You can either be stuck where you are today, or make a decision that, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to learn, whether it's listening to podcasts. Like, there's so much free shit out there now that is at your fingertips. There are no excuses to be a dinosaur and be stuck in the 1990s. So there are 6 hot tips for becoming more resilient.
Fantastic. So there are a couple of resources that are available. Like we said, we're going to give you the focus hack. We're also going to send you a little PDF just of the 7 pillars of resilience, just so that you can stick them up on your wall, or put them as your screensaver. We're also running these sessions with a little bit more detail as workshops. So if you're wanting to put yourself or your team through this in a little bit more detail with a lot more activities and self-assessments, please reach out and we'll let you know dates and details.
We're actually going to send an email with the dates, or if you're interested in running one internally for your team, if you're a business owner or a manager, then we could do that. And hopefully we will be able to actually do face-to-face stuff again soon, because Dora and I love face-to-face. As fun as these webinars are and how, technology is so great, nothing really replaces that team, the energy in a room that's created when people are getting really excited about shit like resilience. So watch this space. And that is really about it. If you want to get in touch, there's our details there, and if anyone's got any questions, we're going to send you a copy of this via email after this later on today. So if you want to share it with anyone, happy for you to do that. And thank you so much for watching and joining us. We hope you've got some value. And
thank you for all your positive reinforcement in your messages to us as we wrap up as well, guys.
Thank you so much. Go out there and enjoy life and be resilient.
Unreal.